Hey, everybody, welcome back. This is Dental Unfiltered. I'm Matt Brown. I'm here with my normal co-host, Dr. Andrew Vallo. We have two awesome guests today, new upcoming awesome podcast, just a couple of dentists, Alex and Eric. They've had an amazing journey. They've changed and pivoted and moved and kind of been through it a little bit, and they've been successful. And they have a really refreshing point of view. And there's a really great contrast here. We have Dr. Vallo, who's grown a group, and we have Alex and Eric, who have thought about growing a group and second thought it and kind of went through it and strategized and put a lot of brain to it. And it's a cool point to have somebody who's here and somebody who's here kind of meet together and have a really interesting conversation. So, first, Alex and Eric, you guys, we talked about doing this episode swap and it was really exciting. And, first let's start off with what's the current state of what you're building? And then we can have Dr. Vallo kind of chime in a little bit. So, where are you guys at in your dental ownership journey?
We stopped building. That's the answer. We didn't do what Andrew did. We decided.
Thank you. Pull the plug.
No, so I think where Andrew was and he's got. Are you at 10 right now? Like open?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we graduated. I think a little bit before you, right? Like we were 2013 when we graduated, and then I did the military 4 years, so that kind of like held us there for 4 years. Alex had a practice. She bought a practice when we were in California when I was stationed at Pendleton. Then we were like, we didn't want to be in Orange County like long term, so we sold that, or she sold that, and then we did startups. So we went the whole like opposite of what she went through with like an acquisition. We're like, no, we just want everything.
Yeah, like no, thank you. Let me start from scratch, please.
So we did that like 2017, 2019 is where we opened our two offices, and then the initial thought was like, let's just do a cluster in like Denver, right? It's like a growing area. There's a lot of people moving in there. Probably similar, like you're in Florida, right? So it's like, everyone moved to Florida the last few years, right after COVID. And then after Office 2, it was more me than her that like stepped on the brake a little bit because I was like, I didn't hate my life. Like it was right after COVID. Yeah, I think like I started working. We had associates. We had an associate at one office. I was working at the other one. But I was doing like 7 to 7s Monday through Friday. Like clinically, that sucked.
That's a lot of dentistry, man.
That was kind of tough. And I don't really love dentistry to begin with.
That was because I was on my maternity leave.
Yeah.
Like I had to. Like I was trying to work as much as I could. But at some point, I'm like, well, I physically can't do this. So
I mean, she probably could have.
Thanks for picking up the slack and then complaining about it all the time.
That is true.
But the plan was to have multiple offices, and I was going to come back and kind of, we had our systems that were, I thought pretty good. And we were just going to, replicate it. And Eric was like, I don't know if I want to do this kind of like alone.
Yeah, I think that's what it was more. I'm very codependent.
So he pitched me on like, maybe we should just sell them. Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of, then we started through that journey, and that's a whole other story on it. But I mean, now just working on other stuff within dental too. But I think we just found that like, I enjoy seeing people. I enjoy talking to people. I feel like I'm more outgoing naturally. So like, I don't mind going in and seeing patients, helping take care of them. I like doing that. I didn't want to do dentistry for 20 years. And I kind of like knew that during dental school. And so that was always a fun little challenge to deal with, but that was more mine. But Alex wanted to be like a big cosmetic dentist at first.
Yeah.
Like a big Instagram cosmetic dentist. Yeah. Well, I feel like, guys, it makes sense because I enjoyed dentistry a lot more before I owned a practice. So like when you're an associate and you're just doing the dentistry, I mean, I'm not saying that I was like geeking out on it, but like I enjoyed it enough. I had fun doing most of it. Once you own a practice and you're also dealing with especially if you're, a smaller practice, smaller group, you don't have like a big leadership team. You're wearing all the hats. You're dealing with all the HR stress. You're dealing with the patient problem. Like when you're an associate, like maybe you're dealing with the patient problem, like she doesn't like the color of her crown. But when you own the practice and you don't have a big leadership team, you're also dealing with the money problems and, the complaints and the bad reviews and all that other stuff. I think it makes the dentistry less fun. I think it kind of makes you a little bit jaded sometimes. I always think if I went back as an associate, I'd probably enjoy the dentistry a lot more than I was enjoying it as a practicing owner at that point. So,
yeah, I think that was kind of my thing too, a little bit. Like I enjoyed dentistry, but not with the first office that I bought the acquisition, because I was just like hell. But when I had my startup and had the systems the way that I wanted them and stuff like that, I really liked the business part of it. I was like, gosh, I kind of like, not the people, but like the actual, like, let me crunch the numbers. Let me look at this. How can I tweak this cog and move this so that I can like make more money and help reduce, overhead and all this stuff. And like the dentistry was just like, it was there. It was like, I also had to do that, but it wasn't, I don't know. It was just like, okay, let me just like not think about dentistry and I'm going to think about something else while I'm like prepping a tooth.
I mean, maybe that was me like doing that to YouTube, coming home every day, being like, I don't like doing this. And you're like, okay, we'll get to it.
You kind of drug her down with you a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
You destroyed Alex's love for cosmetic dentistry. You're like, I don't like this. I'm doing 7-7. And she's like, yeah, maybe we don't open 10 practices. So I have a question for you two. So, there's always these epiphany moments in different dentists' careers, right? Like they decide that maybe multi-practice ownership isn't for them, or like, they went down the implant path and they placed a few and they said, maybe I can't really handle this after I bought the CPCT and all the equipment, right? Like I've seen a lot of different things. What was the pivotal moment where the two of you kind of like, I think you each had your own individual moment where you're like, hey, listen, I don't think I want to do multi-practice. But is there a moment and like a feeling, like an indicator, and you guys were together like, yeah, we're not doing this multi-practice thing? And what was like, kind of like, what was that moment like? And what was the kind of thought process when you guys finally realized it? Like after that, how did you change the direction of the train?
Yeah, so that one's probably more for me because
I still open a third. Right
yeah,
now.
I think she probably would be more open to it than I would. I think I burned out with like those long hours, which kind of had to happen because it was like right around like after COVID happened and like we didn't have a choice, right? Like we didn't have an associate for a bit in the office. So
it was like,
And so I was working like full time at one, half time at the other practice. You were like half time at the other practice too. Yeah. We ended up getting an associate on, which was good. But I think like that part probably just burned me out because I did that for like 18 months. So that was a lot. And then I don't know, it was probably just a mix of little things. It's really fun. So like when we first started and go like our dental journey or whatever, I was always like, oh yeah, everyone on my team, they're going to become my best friend. I'm going to we're all going to get along so well. We're going to hang out and do stuff together. Alex, we got a new family, right? This is awesome. And she's like, just wait. Because she's a little more like naturally, like you're more like skeptical of things, probably more like cynical, like humor, right? Like,
sure.
Well, we'll call her a realist.
Yeah. And
reality.
And for me, like I'll go talk to people and be like, oh, a new best friend, right? Like that's just my personality more. So, I think I always struggled with the balance between like being a parent and a friend, right? Or being their boss and a friend, right? And that was always really tough. So I think for me, it hit harder when, I'd have an employee who, I worked with for like a year or two, and then all of a sudden they just like leave with no notice and don't contact you. And I'm like, what the hell? So like those bothered me more. And then I think eventually she was like, yeah, you'll just get used to it. And after like a couple of years, and you just kind of get callous to it and you don't really now I don't really care anymore, but I did a lot at first. So I think that stuff kind of bugged me. So I don't know, Matt, there was like a specific time. I think it was just an accumulation of a lot of things. And then I think at one point, I don't know, unless you remember, Alex, I think I was just like, I don't enjoy doing this. Like this just, so then we were like, okay, so what's the solution, right?
So you don't like the dentistry part and you don't like the running the team part. Practice ownership maybe just isn't like the right path.
That's why he was that's why he created a software. Like he's doing his own thing.
I do my own thing.
Yeah. He was like, let me build things.
And I didn't hate, like I would still do it. I don't think running a practice, like honestly, I don't think in the grand scheme of things, it's not like running a dental practice is like the hardest thing in the world. Yeah. Like I think if I could go back to, I think it was balancing both. Like, you said you kind of stepped away a little bit, Andrew, from the like clinical piece of it. I've kind of thought too of like, if you're going to have multiple practices, like we have some buddies who have done 4 or 5 offices and they got out clinically, right? That was their whole thing, is they turned into business hat only. And so I think if I were to go back and do it again, I would probably just go and say, I'm going to run the business, right? I'm not going to do any clinical, and I'm just going to focus on growing and building the practices. Cause I was constantly getting torn between the two. And it was like, all right, now for an hour, I have to focus on like the P&L, right? Which like I enjoy doing. Yeah. I love doing that.
Yeah, you like numbers.
Like I want to make sure too, like, it's not like our practices like went to crap or anything.
No.
Like they were both pretty decent offices, right? But I would focus just solely on that. I think if I went back and was just doing that, then I'd probably be more open to it. I just wouldn't do any clinical.
If you could have, during that time period, if you could have picked up the phone and called Dr. Vallo and asked him for advice when you were questioning all this, what would you have asked him? I'm just curious. Like as like a 10 practice owner, you guys are looking in that direction.
Did he have practices then?
No, but let's say 10 practice Dr. Vallo existed then, and you guys had access to him. You were trying to figure out, do I want to go down this path or that path? what do you think you would have asked him to try to figure out what you want to do? Like, you're unsure. You're like, oh man, I don't know if I really want to do this or not. Like, could call Dr. Vallo, who's got 10 practices.
Oh, I mean, maybe asking someone who had a bunch of practices, kind of like, I mean, we did have contacts too, like who had 4 or 5 practices at that time. And I think when I would talk to them, it was just like, I would tell them like, hey man, like I'm burning out over this, and this, like, what would you do? I don't know, not for balancing it.
No, because I think it would be more like, what's the exit strategy? Like, what's your exit strategy at 10? Is that better than an exit strategy at like 2 or whatever? Is it worth, like, whatever, the lemonade worth the squeeze or whatever that saying
Juice
is.
worth the squeeze.
Yeah. Is it like really worth it to get to 10 to exit? Because we knew we wanted to exit.
Oh, and it's
no matter
funny.
what. Like,
It's
we
fun-
knew that we wanted
yeah,
to get
and
out.
it's funny too. So I was going to bring this up to you, Andrew. Like, all of my buddies who built 4 or 5 practices, I asked them if they could go back, and this is like post-selling, what they would do, and they all said I would build 1 mega practice. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. They were all like, and I do have a couple buddies who did 1 mega, like a $6-7 million practice, and their exit was good, right? Like really good. And then my buddies who all did like 5 practices, 6, and they sold. It was really hard to sell as a group because they had like, they had partnership models, they had all these things, and there was a lot to unwind. So it became really like muddied at the end. And then they also, there's also a challenge, I think, at some point on, keeping every practice at the same level, right? And how do you set that up, right? So maybe that would be a question on how you've done it is, as you've grown and built like 7, 8, 9, 10, how have you set things up so because you can't run 10 by yourself, right? You had to have a management team and do all that kind of stuff and have people in place who can do that. So yeah, how do you do that? And what are your thoughts? What would you still, I mean, you're still in the middle of it, but what are your thoughts on the 1 mega practice? And
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of good stuff to unpack. So last weekend I was at the Bulletproof Summit. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Spodak and Bolden, but Spodak has that giant mega practice down in Delray Beach, Florida. And Bolden has his group of Atlanta dental spas. I think he's got 6 in that group, and he's started a separate group where I think he's got maybe 8 or 9 practices now. So they're co-hosts of a podcast. They went 2 totally opposite routes, mega practice, group of practices. I feel like they both have advantages. I personally like maybe I'm biased, but like even looking back and talking to Spodak and hearing different stories, the advantage of doing the one giant group practice is like you can keep margins tighter because there's a lot of recurring costs that you save in that giant practice. The downside of doing that is you're banking on the same demographic to support the growth of this giant mega practice. So I like diversifying the demographics. I mean, at this point in time, we've got access to basically the patient population in Central South Florida. I mean, we, as we continue to expand our footprint, so I feel like it diversifies risk a little bit. I feel like it allows each practice to grow a little bit faster, a little bit easier, because you're not trying to, take 100% or 80% or whatever of one smaller demographic to fill this mega practice. So that's my take on the 2 models. But I mean, obviously there are people with these mega practices that have done extremely well. So.
Yeah, because do all your practices, are they all like super GP practices? Like, are you guys doing implants, endo, all that kind of stuff? Yeah.
So, and it's funny, as you guys were talking earlier, I was thinking about like how we pivot through our career and we change our path and all that stuff, thinking, my first practice was going to be an acquisition and things fell through in the 11th hour. And that's where I switched to the startup model. And now essentially all 10 of the practices have basically been one came with a very small patient base, but essentially they've all been startups. And, at the beginning I was doing the ground up construction, full build out, long timeline, expensive build out cost. And, the smaller, like older 2nd gen spaces that just look disgusting. Like at that point in my mind, I was like, I would never want to do that because you don't get to pick how you do it. And they look gross and, all that stuff. And as time went on, I realized like, wow, I can save a lot of money. And more importantly, I can get a practice open from the time I find it sometimes in a month or 2. So I think our mindset, kind of shifts, as those things happen.
No. You went like I feel like you went the Trader Joe's route, right? I remember we did like a case study on them, and they'll always go into like older strip malls and find spots like that other people don't, because you can usually negotiate more on like rent, right? You can pull a lot more levers on that to get it where you want. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, that's how we opened. So our last 6 offices, we opened 6 in 6 months. And that's how we did it, is they were all essentially these second gen spaces that either needed no construction or like very minor, like maybe we put on a fresh coat of paint or something like that. So like low cost, low time frame. It was crazy. I mean, at this point in time, we're taking a breather. So like we don't have any projects on the horizon, and I'm happy about that. It's giving me time to refocus.
I think this is the first time in like 3 years you don't have a project on the horizon. The 3 years of us being together, people, you guys, Eric and Alex, you guys, I talked earlier about the juice being worth the squeeze. And a lot of times the questions I get about Dr. Vallo is like, how did you do it? And they say, I want to be like Dr. Vallo. And I say, do you want to be like Dr. Vallo? Do you know what you're asking for? And I'm like, I've been with him for the last 4 years almost. And I can't get the guy on the phone half the time. The only time I see him is when we do a podcast together. There is a point where it's like he was in the trenches. Like he would call me and say, I just committed to a space I've never seen before. And there was a point where it's like he was just a running and gunning so fast that the guy never stopped moving.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so then your guys' connection was, did Matt like help market one of your first practices?
Let me tell you the story. Let me tell you the story of the Andrew Vallo mistake that he made. So
how you fixed it? Oh, wait. Is this a hero story about Matt?
Let me tell you how this went down with me and Andrew. So I did a demo, Early Energize. Okay. Andrew passed on us, but instantly on the demo, I was like, this guy's going to be the deal. Like very early in our relationship, I was like, you're going to be awesome. He went with someone else, giant mistake, came back to us a couple months later and was like, hey man, let's work together. And then in the first 6 months, it's a little rough. Andrew's very demanding and he's kind of he's a princess and he's a high maintenance client for sure. But then he got what we were doing and we got what he wanted to do. And it kind of became magic after that. As far as our side and the business side goes, like it's been he came to us through Ideal Practices and it's been like the coolest thing in the world to watch. I really believe this. And I've said this publicly a lot of places. I've talked to other companies that are data driven that look at data with me. I believe Andrew Vallo is the greatest startup doc of all time. And watching that happen, because every single practice, 10 practices in a row, all did mature practice numbers month 1. He had 10 home runs in a row. I don't know if anyone else in the industry has ever done that. And watching him like pivot and move so fast to do that has been exciting. But in the beginning, he passed on me. So he rejected me in the beginning.
Andrew, I think Alex and I both made a personal cheerleader like, Matt, geez, I need to hire someone that can just hype me up like that.
He likes to try to make my head bigger, I think. I don't know, but I did pass on him. I will say at that, again, mindset shift. So I think mindset is everything if you're going to be an entrepreneur. I feel like I've always been fairly abundance mindset. I've always been kind of like, I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to be, the salmon swimming upstream, whatever it is. But when we first opened, at that point, I didn't have a lot of cash reserves. I was trying to be conscientious of what I was spending. And I told Matt, I was like, I like what you're telling me. I think you guys are too expensive. I think I could do this for less. And so I tried 2 or 3 other either like small companies or like individuals that would like help with marketing over the course of like the first 6 months that my first startup was open. And I mean, we did well, but I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. And so eventually I decided to bite the bullet and go back to Matt and like a true marketing, dental marketing company. And I feel like since that time, my mindset shifted even more where it's like full abundance mode. Like Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. If you invest in great marketing, patients will come. We figured out the formula. Our implant only offices will typically get 100 plus, new implant consults every single month. Our general practices, I mean, we've had some of our bigger GP practices where we're getting 200, 250 new patients a month. And so like, that's a conversation I'll have with other dentists who have startups and are struggling. It's like, every other business model in the world believes that marketing is key to success, especially if you're a small business, a startup business, that type of thing. But for some reason in dentistry, I feel like a lot of times you'll hear other quote unquote experts in the industry talk about DIYing it and, hustle and ground market. And there's a particular dentist who I don't necessarily get along with who tries to shill this idea that $500 a month is all you need to spend on marketing, and you can grow your practice enormously. So I kind of obviously went the other direction with all that stuff.
No, I mean, if you think about it, like just with math too, right? If you're getting a positive return on it, then you keep on spending, right? Until you're not. I mean, that's my thought at least. And I know for us too, I think one of our epiphany moments where we were going against the grain, like you said, works is when it was COVID, because when everything shut down, right? In Colorado here, we had, I think it was March 15th or 16th, something like that. And we were pretty much, we were fully shut down pretty much until beginning of May. And then they let us kind of slowly open. So, but what we did is we were screw it. No one's going to spend anything in marketing during COVID. We know that. There were dentists next to us that were older dentists who were I'm just going to shut down for 4 months. We're not going to see any hygiene, even if we're allowed to. We're booking people out 4 or 5 months just to make sure everything's okay. And we were screw it. We're going to be opposite. We spent more in marketing. We put out huge signs that were open for emergencies. Yeah. We kind of did all that stuff. And we literally had the best month we ever had in June of COVID ever. And so we both saw that and we're okay, well, there's proof that actually works. And then it sucked because then we had a hard time getting all those government reimbursement stuff. Because they were prove you didn't do well, show how COVID hurt you. We're it actually didn't hurt. It actually helped us more. And so we're oh, great.
It was funny during COVID, I don't know if you guys know, we book all the appointments for our clients. And so many docs went into this retirement mode of they'll leave a voicemail. My wife's a former assistant or hygienist. We'll just run in after listening to the voicemails. The voicemail will get left on Monday. They'd call the patient back on Thursday for the emergency. They found somewhere else to go. My uncle is the comfort dentist in Virginia Beach, really good sedation dentist. And I convinced him, his wife is a former hygienist. I convinced him, I came in, let's just run emergency ads and just book your calendar full of emergencies. He had some of the best months he ever had because no one else was answering the phone for their patients.
Well, we brought the phone. We took the office phone to our house and just plugged it in.
Yeah,
it worked, and it was whoa. So it's it's Andrew's saying, it is more of an abundance mindset thing of thinking all right, where's the opportunity, and is no one else doing this? Okay, because we had so many calls from people who were my dentist down the street isn't open. Will you come see me? And it's are we allowed to see you? Yes. Do we have all the protocols in place? Yes. Okay, that's fine. And it worked. And then we got a bunch of patients.
One other thing about Andrew's mindset, and he doesn't talk about this a lot, is have you heard the phrase to do something with a burning desire? I want to do this with a burning desire, or I did it with a burning desire. Do you know the source of that phrase?
I do not.
No idea.
Tell me.
So this is kind of how me and Andrew approach everything in business, to be honest. Me, Andrew, my business partner, Ryan, this is how we do things. So when the conquistadors would go conquer a land, they would send their troops to shore, and the leaders would turn around and burn the ships so no one could ever retreat. Okay. Andrew does things like sitting by a pool on vacation with his wife. Real estate guy calls. Hey, I found a space that's perfect for you. Cool, sign the lease. I'll look at it later. Andrew jumps in and knows no matter what, he's betting on himself. And and it's kind of how I go into things with business. So I put the gun to my head. It's either win or lose. So on one side, he does have an abundance mindset after watching him the last few years. On the other side, he has it's all on my shoulders, win or lose, do or die, no matter what mindset. And that burning desire combines with abundance, and you get some pretty magical stuff that happens.
I think that's the burn the boats idea or burn the boats story. But I do want to clarify something before I get anyone in trouble here. I do not sign leases and then look at them later.
Okay, you didn't sign, but you were I like it, I'll probably take it.
I make decisions pretty quickly. So I don't know if you guys ever took the Colby test, but I'm a 9 out of 10 quick start, and I'm very low on the fact finder. And that basically means when I see something, when I get an idea, I want to do it as quickly as possible. I want to do it yesterday. It presents a challenge sometimes with my leadership team, because I'll be all right, guys, I've got this new idea. When can we roll it out? And they're okay, yeah, we want to look into this, and maybe in a month or 2 months. And I'm a month, 2 months, how about tomorrow? Let's get let's get this going. So I think that's more what Matt means is I'll see an opportunity and I'll pretty quickly decide this is the right thing for me. But advice for all the listeners out there: hire professionals. Don't DIY everything. You think you're saving a few bucks, but in the long run, it's going to cost you so much. I have invested in great professionals throughout my ownership journey. I've had multiple coaches, mastermind groups, attorneys, CPAs, other consultants, commercial real estate brokers. You want to have people on your side that actually know what they're doing. I'm dealing with my first lawsuit right now. It's a total joke. Honestly, it's ridiculous. But even though I know it's a joke, like I would never try to go out after it myself. Like that would be stupid. I hired a great attorney who actually has been on our podcast before. So he's helping me, navigate those waters as well. So definitely hire professionals. That's my point.
I agree. Because even when we were going through like selling the practices, right? When I finally convinced Alex that it was just sell, we reached out to some of our friends who we were in like a small Facebook group, right? That kind of like similar old startup docs around the same time, lots of like really high achievers in that group. So it was a really cool group to be in. And some of them were like, yeah, dude, I'm getting burnt out too. I've got the next thing I want to work on. Like it's not having a bunch of practices that just, I don't want to do that. So we at first were like, okay, well, we can just do it ourselves. We don't need a broker, right? Like we'll just call like one huge DSO that everyone probably knows of and talk to them. So like I did that at first and we got numbers back. And I was like, yeah, I mean, like, I feel like I understand business pretty well. Like I have an MBA. So like I have a background in business and, I was able to read most of the stuff they said, but I was like, I'm also not like a PE guy and like me going against like a DSO that has a whole team and 800 offices or whatever, like I'm probably going to lose that one. Right. And it would just take a lot of time. Right. And I'm still trying to keep my practices growing. So when I sell it, can sell for max value. So we ended up bringing a broker on and that, like to your point, like that would be, I think if you're just selling like a small little practice just to another private dentist, like, yeah, maybe you don't need one, but I don't really buy when people are like, you don't need a broker at all to sell something. Like if you're trying to sell a multi-million-dollar business, which at some point when you do, it's just gonna be huge, right? Like you would not do that. I don't think my advice to you would be don't do it by yourself, like hire someone.
I think it also matters like how much time you have too. So again, like when we sold our first house in Columbus, Ohio, moved down to Florida, at that point, I didn't have a lot of money and I had a lot more time. I was working in public health dentistry. So, I mean, I'd show up, I'd see patients, I'd be done. That's it. And at that point, I was like, I'm pretty smart. I could sell my own house. I don't need to have a realtor. And if I can find a buyer without a realtor, I can save that 6% or whatever. And I did. And it sold quickly. And I feel like I got a good value for the house, above whatever market price. And we saved like $30,000-$40,000, whatever it was. Like that was huge. That was great. Now at this point, I've already done it before. I know how to sell a house. It's not that hard, but we just moved to another house. Would I try to sell this house on my own or would I hire a realtor and pay them the cost? 100% I'm going to hire the realtor because my time is way more valuable than the money I would save at that point. So I think that's another important life lesson. There are phases of your career. There's seasons to your career. If you're early on, you might have to do a little bit more hustling and grinding and ground marking and a little bit more DIY. Again, be careful. Make sure you're not DIYing something that's going to get you in trouble. But like in that season, maybe you do a little bit more of those things. As you mature, like your time becomes your most valuable resource. And you've got to think about like how much per hour, does this cost? How much is my time worth? If that task, cost less than your time is worth, pay somebody to do it and use your time for something more valuable.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. I don't cook my food anymore. Like I have a private chef that comes in and does that because I don't have time to do that. And like, watching the kids and stuff like that. Like there's just things that when you take a look at how much time you need to spend on something versus like, if I just worked on this, I could, exponentially grow or make more money. It's an easy decision. Plus I hate cooking. So there's like a whole thing to that. So I agree. And with the practice too, it's like in the beginning when we started our first startup, plenty of time, like we didn't have 100, new patients on day one. So we were able to sit down, build the systems out on things that made a difference. Like for marketing, I'm not going to do it yourself because I don't have that expertise. And it was going to take me way too long to like get a master's degree in how to market. I'm like, no, I'm going to hire someone to do this. But the other things that are like, okay, I have the skill set. I can do it. Let's build this system out. And then that just becomes the base for all the other practices.
Yeah. And that's kind of what you did. Like we were talking with one of our other buddies and like, I know when you started your practice, right. And it was, you had gaps in the schedule and it was just you there and an assistant. They did a lot of like role playing through systems. So it was like, all right, what's our patient experience look like? we know it wants to, like we had learned stuff from consultants, right? Or gone to courses, and we're like, okay, well, now that we have this information, or you do, now let's build it out. So I think one good piece of advice too is like, when you're slow, or like even if there's a day that's slow or something isn't there, like see how you can be still productive and not like have everyone just on their phones all the time. So like that helps you guys a lot, I think, because you had a new assistant who just came from like an internship, right, from assisting school, and you had a chance to train her exactly how you wanted to do everything from like start to finish. And then, the goal is then you, like you said, you write those systems out, and then you have a playbook, right? It's almost like, it's just almost like how like a franchise thing works, right? Like you had the first McDonald's, they built that out, and then you use that for 1, for 2, 3, 4, which I'm sure, Andrew, you probably did the same kind of thing, right? It's just rinse and repeat.
No, I think that's a great point, man. I honestly, if I were to go back and do everything again, I would do the same thing I did. I would build a group. I wouldn't, change gears. I would probably go to the quick start model sooner, rather than trying to do all these build outs where you had to deal with permits and delays and construction costs and all that stuff. The other big change I'd make, though, is I would put more emphasis early on the systems and the role playing. I think, honestly, at this point, at 10 offices, I think role playing and onboarding and training is like the biggest pieces missing from our group. And it's because early on I was only focused on growth. I was only focused on new patient numbers and revenue and, KPI. Like I was focused on those things. I was not focused on building out systems, or like maybe I had rudimentary systems that we, built out for the very first office when it was small, but then like I wasn't keeping up with them like I should. And so the last year or so, we've really shifted emphasis back to systems, especially now that I've got a leadership team here helping me. But so I was at this Bulletproof Summit with my COO, my CFO, and like one of the conversations we had is like, I think we really need to put even more emphasis on role playing, training, onboarding, because some of the things we were hearing were like, yeah, like we're a fairly decent sized group, and like we're not doing these things as well as we should at this point. So
yeah, no, I think that's a good point, and I think especially too, like when a group like yours too, eventually, if at some point you exit on it too, like, whether it's like a PE firm that can buy you, right? Or it's just like another big group thing, they're going to look to and say, like, how stable have you been too, right? Like they're going to dive into that stuff and do a lot more diligence, because like your deal size is going to be way bigger than just a single office. So I think that's smart, is to like get that in place, because I feel like at least what we're going through now, like that is a big factor they look into, is like proving that you've been able to keep this stable and you're not just like an EBITDA aggregator, right? Like you're not just like, I just buy. Okay, now I want to sell it. It's like, well, yeah, you bought like you did 6 practices in 6 months. Like show me that you can keep those stable for 3 years, and then I'll pay you more money, right? I feel like that's kind of what those guys look for. But I have one question for you on your like when you said, hey, we opened 6 practices in 6 months and had like that rapid growth, which is awesome. So the one challenge we always had when we had our 2 offices, right? Alex had hers, and the practice was, we went through like Bank of America or something like that. And we were like, hey, we want to open up practice number 2. And they were like, Alex, you can't open number 2, man. Like you can't. Yeah. So I had to have it all under mine, because, they were like, you have to take equity from the first one. We can't give it, we can't do another loan with Alex. With your growth, did you grow yours by taking like your first practice, second practice was growing, and you were using cash for that? Or did you work with like a local bank? Like how, to people listening, like how do you grow to 10 offices, or how did you do that?
Yeah, so I'll try to make the story kind of condensed here, but I do think it's important for people that want to grow a group. So the first office, I looked for the lowest interest rate I could get, and so I was between Huntington and Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo offered me just a little bit better rate, so I went with them. That was really the only factor that I considered. That's all I knew to ask, like what's the rate. So I opened that first practice. We did our second startup like 8 months later. And I went back to Wells Fargo and I was like, hey, I'm ready to do another one. And they were like, kind of like laughed at me. And I was like, all right, guys, like seriously though, this is a great, opportunity, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, it's too early. So then I went back to Huntington and told them, hey, I'm looking at doing a second practice. And at that point they were comfortable taking on that one small loan. Cause I did the second one a little cheaper than the first one. And that things were fine. Well, then fast forward, 12 months later, we're ready to start working on startups 3 and 4 at the same time. And Wells Fargo again was like, yeah, there's no chance in hell. I talked to Huntington some more, and it took some convincing, but eventually they were like, we could potentially do this. We like, the growth track you're on. We like the numbers that you're doing. The cash flow is good. But if we were going to do it, we want to own everything. So we're going to have to refinance Wells Fargo's loan. We're going to have to buy them out. And then we will have that first lien on all 4 practices. So the problem with that is there's large prepayment penalties you pay if you refinance a loan pretty early on. So, I mean, I want to say it was in the neighborhood of like $75,000 in prepayment penalties I was going to pay. And I didn't really want to do that. So I went back to Wells Fargo and I basically told them, I was like, listen, guys, this is your fault. Like, I'm not trying to switch banks. You basically told me you don't want me as a customer anymore. You don't want to support my growth. So I don't really think it's fair that I have to pay all these prepayment penalties. And at that point, I didn't even have the podcast, but I'm like, I'm a pretty vocal guy. Like, I'm pretty involved in the dental community. I don't think you really want to like make me that upset. Can we find I'm reasonable. Like, let's find a compromise. So they actually did cut the prepayment penalties in half, which my dad, who's been in banking for 30 years, was shocked. He's like, banks never do that. I don't really know how you pulled that one over on them. But yeah, so I managed. So I was fine with that. I paid half the prepayment penalties. I think it was about 35 grand, give or take. Huntington took over all 4 loans. And since then, Huntington has, to their word, helped us continue to grow up until we got to practice number 8. At that point in time, they said, we're open to more lending. However, we need updated tax returns. We need this, we need that. Tax returns were slow. And I wasn't going to miss an opportunity. It was, it was 2 of these great second gen spaces. I could get them open pretty quick. So the first one, I made a personal loan to the business to buy the practice. And now the practice, I gave them a little grace period, but they should be starting to pay me back for that loan here soon. And then the second one, we just bootstrapped from the cash flow from the other offices. So the last 2, we went that route. The first 8, we got funding on from the bank.
So like, when you said if you could go back and do it again, you do those like quick starts, right? So are you finding spaces where there were were all those previous dental offices? Like, okay, so they were dental offices that either yeah. So you were going in and just switching out maybe equipment and just kind of like giving it, like you said, like just a little makeover, right? And then you could open it. So I guess the question is, how come there's so many practices? Are there a lot of practices in your area where they just like were shutting down? Was it like a post-COVID thing?
I guess first of all, I will say what's helped me is that I'm no longer driven by the demographics. I haven't run demographic reports since my first practice. I have general areas like, hey, we want to maybe get somewhere in the Fort Myers, Naples area, or we want to maybe get somewhere in Miami. But rather than trying to get into specific areas, I'm just looking for these specific opportunities, and I'll go where the opportunities are. So that's part of it. The main reasons why these spaces open up, sometimes we've taken over from a couple like DSOs. Like some of the DSOs that aren't as great, they have practices that just are poorly run, not very profitable, and they cut off the foot to save the leg, or whatever the analogy is. They're like, all right, we're gonna shut down this dying practice so that the rest of the group is stronger, and then I can just step in. Usually they take the equipment with them, so you got to equip it. But most of the time, the space is built out, and often it's in cosmetically pretty good shape. So like, there's been a lot where I have had to do like nothing or very, very little as far as cosmetic up. Like my cosmetic upgrades is I'll go get some like nicer, more modern furniture from Wayfair and put that in there. Maybe I'll get like $1,000 chandelier as a centerpiece. Like I'll spend a little bit of money on things that like catch people's attention, but like I won't go do new floors, new paint. There's no plumbing to do. There's no electrical to do. So that saves you a heck of a lot of money and a lot of time for sure. The other things that happen, we've had 2 times where the dentist moved across the street to a bigger building, so they outgrew their space. And so the one, we just took over the vacant space. We did do a little bit of remodel there. The other one, the dentist actually left they sold us all their equipment for like $99,000. So we got, I think it was 4 or 5 rooms full of, dental chairs and delivery units and assistant stools and doctor stools and handpiece. Like they basically left everything behind because they wanted to start fresh with all brand new matching stuff at their new bigger practice. So that was a good opportunity. I've had dentists basically abandon a space because they unfortunately weren't paying their bills, and they had put like a lien on their equipment, and basically they weren't paying their rent, so they were essentially evicted. So I've had, unfortunately, like that situation come up. But there's a lot of different reasons why these spaces come available. Your best bet if you're looking for something like this is like make a good relationship with the dental practice brokers and let them know that this is what you're looking for, because they'll love you. Most people don't want this. So if you tell them like, hey, I'm looking for like an abandoned dental practice space, because typically either you want to buy a strong practice with existing patients, or you want to do a startup and you want to do it your way. You want to do the build out and all that stuff. There's not a lot of dentists that think about it in this regard. So like they often have trouble finding people to come in and sign these leases and take over these spaces. So practice broker and then commercial real estate broker is the other one, because they're just looking for someone to come in and sign the lease on the space there.
Yeah, that definitely helps. Like we got to know our commercial real estate, like the local guy around here, and that helps a lot. And yeah, you're right. I mean, people look at that and they
get scared. They go like, oh, it failed or something. It's probably because there's not enough patients around. So like, why would I take that on? I don't have some special sauce or whatever. It's like, oh, I don't want to fail. So yeah, that's good that you've been able to.
I think there's some market conditions that were happening over the last 5 years that have allowed for this. I think, there was a point in time where if you had like you and 6 buddies in an area, you could duct tape your practices together and sell it to a peg for a multiple, because they didn't really have the understanding yet that was getting paid high. And then I think we saw this in Houston. We have a lot of practices in Houston, and there was a DSO down there, I won't say their name, and they tried to grow real rapidly. And all of a sudden there's all these spaces they're paying rent on where the doors are locked. And I think that dumb peg money early has created some opportunities now. I think some docs are kind of scared of it because they see, like you said, they see the space and they're like, well, if they couldn't make it work as a peg with all these resources, how can I do it? And the reality is they just went too fast, didn't know what they were doing. And there are some awesome opportunities there. I had a doc in Tennessee who called me. He had one practice with us, went to open number 2. And he said, Matt, I have an opportunity to practice. It's a former DSO location. They shut it down a year ago. They're paying rent on it. They're on a 4-year. They have 4 years left in their lease, I think. He said, there's a CBCT in there. There's chairs, everything. I can get it for $150. What do I do? And it was like in Knoxville or somewhere good. I was like, you say yes. He said, well, if they couldn't do it, what makes you think I could? I was like, it's not that the market was bad, isn't why they couldn't do it. It's really weird. Like there's all these metrics, like 99% of small businesses fail. Logos and equipment and chairs and CBCs, T's don't fail. People fail. Right? I think it has nothing to do with the market, and docs kind of put that on there, like put this fear on there of like, well, what? That's just a bad market. There's people with teeth everywhere. Just because that's vacant and is a shell of a practice doesn't mean that you can't rejuvenize it and make it awesome.
You're getting it way cheaper too, probably, I would think, Andrew. Like, because I mean, our startups, like even when we did 8 years ago, 6 years ago, I mean, it was $500,000-$600,000. I mean, we're in Denver, so it's stuff is expensive there, but I would imagine you can probably get those practices pretty like cheaply if you're just taking over an abandoned space. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah. Our last 6 offices total cost to open has ranged kind of between like 150 and 250. So, much more and much faster timelines. You guys want to hear something crazy? So office number 10, that was our cheapest office we've ever done. Abandoned, Great Expressions office, no cosmetic work needed on the practice. We equipped 5 rooms. I now do Danceroo for the chairs. They gave me a great deal. So like our total equipment costs are pretty low we even put a CBCT in there, but there's almost no other expenses, a little bit of signage, a little bit of attorney fees, little bit of working capital, maybe to do the first marketing push, but about $150K total to open the practice. Our first 5 days open in that location, we collected $153,000. So it took 5 days to cover the costs that it took to open that last startup. So.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. Okay, so I wanted to go through and ask you too, Alex, I think you wanted to ask him this too, about like the whole associate model, right? So I always struggled. So personally, I always struggled and said, I don't know how it would be really difficult. I thought like, hey, have 8 practices, 10 practices, however many, right? And have it just associate driven. You thought that was probably more like doable.
Yeah.
I thought like, if people are getting paid well, that's awesome, but you're going to end up just eventually like in my opinion was any like really awesome producer or someone who you're like, oh man, this guy's a rock star. They're just going to open up their own practice or they're going to ask for equity, right? Like I would think at some point they were. I don't know if I buy the whole like they'll want to be an associate for 20 years and they're happy with that. Maybe I'm wrong. So we had one of our buddies and he just went like the partner model, right? So when he would bring people in, if they were good, he would partner with them on other practices. So that way they had some responsibility. He had some I think pros and cons of doing that, right? Like even if they are a partner, they may still not work and grind as hard as you do, right? Which is a challenge. So what do you do? Like, how does your model work? Do all your docs that you bring in, are they just associates? Do they have pathways to ownership or partnership?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great question. So I would say in general, we've created growth tracks for pretty much every position in our group because our goal is we want people to feel like they can grow within their own position within our company without having to get like promoted to a new position. So like we've got tiers for hygienists, we've got tiers for office managers, we've got tiers for treatment coordinators. And as far as the dentists go, I set the stage right from the beginning. So rather than be like, oh, we'll talk about it later, or we'll see how you do, we'll see how things go. I tell them very clear cut, like when we bring them in, here's what it. So first of all, our associate like pay model is the same for everybody. So like we won't negotiate it. The daily guarantee ranges very slightly, but typically the daily guarantee is $700 to $800 a day. That never expires. In my mind, if those docs aren't producing enough to earn $700 to $800 a day in pay, there's something wrong on my either they're not the right fit for our group or I'm doing something wrong. I'm not getting enough patients in their chairs. So like I won't have those expire. I think it gives them some comfort. It's good when they go to get loans because they have kind of like guaranteed pay and all that stuff. And then we do a draw on 30% of their adjusted production. That is fixed. We want it's 30% adjusted production, less 30% lab bills. I've had multiple dentists try to negotiate that with me. In the beginning, we used to do difference for different docs. And at this point, we just want it standardized.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you got 10 offices, that's the thing where it's challenging. Like, I think what you have to do is when you get to your sizes, you have to just have a standard, right? Like McDonald's can't have a different way that they make a burger for every office, right? Like you have to have some of that stuff set.
That's part of it. But like the other part too, is I just realized it was hurting our margins. So like we had some docs making like 33%, not paying any lab bills. And I realized like I spend so much money on marketing. I'm going to give them the opportunity to earn way more money at 30%, less 30% lab bills in our group than they could earn at 33 or 35% at almost any other office. Like that's my argument to them. It's like, listen, I'm going to feed you the patients. If you're a productive dentist, you're going to we have this year, we will have multiple, when I say multiple, probably at least 5 of our docs make over $500,000 this year on a 4-day work week as an associate with no other responsibilities, making 30% of adjusted production, less their lab bills. So the compensation is definitely there if they have the right mindset. But the other thing that we do, if a doc goes into one of our all of our startups are associate driven. So I have never worked in any practice besides our flagship. And even that one, I got out of the chair almost a year ago now. So, all of our startups totally associate driven from day one. We've got associates kind of run the show there. And if they go into a startup practice, after 1 year, they're gifted 5% of equity in that office. So basically it's like, hey, you earn a little piece of the pie, sweat equity. You help us build this from day one. And hopefully you made great money along the way too that year, but now you're an equity owner in the practice. At that 1 year mark, they also have the opportunity to purchase up to an additional 20% of that practice. So they can own 25% of the practice they work in. They don't have to buy any. They could buy 10%. They could buy 15%. So like it's totally up to them and what they want to do. Sometimes we've had a handful of docs now hit that kind of earned equity. Some are just happy with their 5% they got. We've got one who's in the works to purchase an additional 20%. So either way, I'm happy. I mean, in all honesty, I think it works better in my favor if they just take their 5% because now they're locked in. They've got some equity. I'm selling it to them at a discounted rate from what it's even worth today, but definitely what it's going to be worth when we sell it. So I'm taking a hit on that, but I want to do that because I know some people want more than 5%. And if we've got great docs with us, I want to give them that opportunity to, purchase some more equity there. The stipulations are, we both have to decide it's a good fit. So at the end of that 1 year, and I always tell them too, like, listen, if it's not a good fit, we're probably going to know before the end of that 1 year. It's not going to be like, the year's up. You know what? I don't think this is a good fit. So we're probably going to know before that fact. The other stipulations is that 5% gifted equity. If they leave, it doesn't go with them. So if they're like, hey, I want to go to do my own thing. I want to cash out the 5%. It's like, well, okay, you're leaving that on the table. So that was a gift. you only get that equity if you stick around.
It's more just like phantom equity, right? Like you're just giving them profit distributions out. Like, I guess if they stay and you sold, then they can convert that 5%. Is that how that works?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it is true equity, but the way that the agreement's written up is that it is sweat equity, and that they forfeit that equity if they leave. And then even when we do eventually have an exit, they have to agree to stay on, I think it's like 2 years or whatever with the buyer. So like we're kind of locking them in if the buyer wants to keep them. So we're kind of putting the golden handcuffs on those docs with that equity. Now the purchased equity, obviously we can't just say, hey, if you leave, it's gone. You purchased it. But we do have stipulations in there, like if you leave in a certain amount of time, then it's going to devalue the equity. And at that point, you're forced to sell it back to us for the lesser of the current value or the price that you paid originally. So I tell the docs at the beginning, like, don't buy equity unless you're planning to stick around if you want to stick around and grow this thing with us, like you're going to end up doing really, really well. But if in your mind, you're like, hey, I want to buy this for a year or two, make some money and cash out, that's not the right move for you. I would not do that. Just take the 5% you're gifted. You'll get profit distributions when we do them. And then if you decide to leave, hey, no problem, no hard feelings, good luck. You just leave the equity behind at that point.
So then within your group, another question, do you guys do, because you're at 10 offices now, when you guys are going through and I guess starting from like revenue down to profit on it, right? Like, are you guys taking out management fees now since you guys have like a leadership team and all that too?
Yeah. So we set ours at 3%. I'll be honest, it was lower than what I was advised to set them at. I was kind of advised to set them at like 5 to 6%, but in my mind, so first of all, we do have some management costs. Now, some things are still passed back to the offices. So like offices do reimburse certain things. The 3% is more of a kind of branding, franchising, like overall marketing for the group, that type of a thing. But I mean, it does work out well. I feel like it's a small enough number that it doesn't have a significant impact on our associate docs, because our associate docs, they own at the sub DSO level. So we've got like our practice entity, we've got the sub DSO, that's where their equity sits. And then we've got, our parent company, Starlight Dental Management, and that's where the management fees flow up to before any profit distributions are made at that sub DSO level.
So then do you own all the clinical entities since you have a license there?
So yeah, so all of the clinical entities. So I do have a partner. We've got offices that only do dental implants. So like we've got 4 offices. All they do is dental implants. I've never placed a dental implant in my life. I've never restored a dental implant. I just never got into that part of dentistry. But my partner is a periodontist, and he's all about that stuff. So he is like our clinical director. He vets the super GP implant docs. He helps them with cases. He checks the quality of the work, quality control, all that stuff. So we're 50-50 partners on the implant offices. So we each own 50% at the practice level of those offices. And then the general offices I own 100% of. But we're actually looking at shifting gears. We've kind of realized that it almost works better just to do one larger practice that also really focuses heavily on implants. So now we're kind of changing that split on those offices there. We may do some more implant only offices. Like the only reason I would do one is if it was in a new demographic where we're not in for implants and it's a second gen space that only had like 4 to 5 ops. It's really tough to do an associate driven general practice with hygiene and 4 to 5 ops. It's very easy to do an implant only model with no hygiene in those spaces. So like, I think we're not necessarily looking for implant only offices, but if they come about the right opportunity, we'll do it. In general, though, we're trying to find 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like those bigger practices that are abandoned. And we're going to do like general practices where we also place a lot of implants in them. So.
I mean, yeah, I think it makes sense, right? Because then if you've got the demographics to support it, just bring it in-house, right? And just have a couple chairs like dedicated to that versus having 2 spaces.
A little bit less risk. And I mean, honestly, at this point too, like I don't think I want to grow from 10 to 50 practices or 10 to 40 practices. Like I think we want to pump the brakes a little bit. We want to focus. There's so much same store growth potential still. So we want to focus on that. We want to focus on systems and training and onboarding. And I mean, it's gotten a lot better over the last year or so, especially with our leadership team, but there's still a good amount that we can do there. And then I think as like those one-off great opportunities come on, we'll take them on. But I I hope we never do 6 offices in 6 months again. That was a little bit excessive. So
like you said, it was like the season 4, right? So it's like you were in growth mode, right? Now you're in like stable mode, right? And like trying to get everything like to show proof, like, hey, I know how to find leases. I know how to find practices, right? Now I feel like the goal now is like, now I know how to grow practices for a prolonged period of time and show stable growth, right? And so that's awesome.
well, and I've been telling my wife for the last 4 years that I'm in growth mode and that, hey, pretty soon things are going to calm down. So I think I can only say that. I can only say that so many times. So I'm kind of hitting that limit there too. But I did have a question for you guys. So what does your daily life look like now? I imagine, you guys still have to be involved in some way in the practices that you sold to. What is it, a DSO or private equity that bought your
DSO?
DSO. Okay. Still some involvement, I imagine, in the practices there.
Yeah, I can go through all of that. So Alex, luckily,
I retired.
yeah. So the nice thing
I'm not
is,
clinical anymore, and the good thing is that because I was out of practice for like the year and a half or a year before the DSO bought the practices, I wasn't on like their radar pretty much. Like I was so far removed already that I wasn't tied into the sale of it.
yeah. And then I'll go through and explain it. I'll just mansplain this, right?
Sure. Okay. So what happened?
So yeah. So basically, we found out, right, when you're selling your practices, right, they'll value you like almost everything's on like your trailing 12 months, right, or your TTM. So when they're deciding, like, if I was a dentist and I was like, hey, I'm gonna sell, right, or like when Andrew's like, hey, we're gonna sell, and he's like, I don't want to do any clinical and I just want to manage. Our friends who did that same route, they just made sure they weren't clinical for 12 months prior to the sale date because the DSO or PE group is going to look and say, okay, 12 months you haven't worked there and you're still showing that the practice is stable. I think that's good enough to say, like, we don't need you there clinically, right? You've proven the model that it works without you. So because when we had our second kid, it had been, like a year and a half since then, and then we sold. I had asked them at first, of course, they were like, hey, does Alex want to be on this contract? And we're like, no, I don't. Like, why would you tie someone to it if they didn't have to be there? So we're like, no, just put it all on me. Even though like she had the practice loan for the first one and I had it for the second one, I just kind of assumed both of the practices and then it just stayed on me that way. Then we have more optionality and flexibility. If Alex wants to go do something again in a bit, she can. And she's not tied to something that she wasn't really a part of. She's still a part of it, but like she wasn't doing any management or clinical stuff, right? So it's like you try to avoid the golden handcuffs when you can, right? If you can. And so what we then did too is, sorry, I get excited about this stuff because I really enjoyed the process of like selling. It was fun. And then, so everything was based on that last trailing 12 months. Like we planned, and I wish if I could go back again, we probably would have planned like 18 months prior to when we knew we were going to sell on like, what are things that like, do we need a CBCT machine? Like, do we need like a new chair here? If we get that, is that going to make our value go higher? Or is the DSO going to be like, well, thanks to the new chair, right? So it's deciding and learning beforehand.
Well, it's because we did an expansion on my office like right before.
So we kind of like, go through and decide like, if you're going to sell, then I'd say 18 months out, start to plan ahead, right? Like maybe talk to like some brokers, get like a practice valuation so you kind of know, start to talk to people, like you said, who are experts who have done this a bunch of times. And then that way, when you're trying to make a decision and saying, do I get this machine? Do I get this? Do I get this? It's like, yes or no, right? Is it going to add value? It's kind of like when you're selling your house, right? You wouldn't go ahead and like remodel. You wouldn't remodel like your whole kitchen to the new stuff you liked if your kitchen was still pretty nice, right? If it's not going to add value. So I think it's learning how to do that stuff. And then just really focusing in on growth. And then I totally forgot your question.
Our daily life.
Our daily life? Yeah. So daily life. Okay. So then, that ties into it. So they made us, they looked at, and they pretty much said like, how much have you worked clinically the last year? Like how many hours are you working clinically and how much are you working on the business? And, you guesstimate, right? And so I was like, I'm about like 20 hours a week clinical probably. And then the other 20 was, I just based it on 40 hours, right? And, how much vacation do you take? All that kind of stuff. And they're pretty like loose with it, right? Just show them a report. So they pretty much have you sign like an employment contract. And then you have your other contract that's related more to like your equity, right? So that's where they're like, hey, it's a 5-year employment contract or it's a 3-year or 4-year, whatever. Some will negotiate, some won't. That piece is like, how much are you going to work for how long? Kind of like what you were saying, Andrew, with like, your associates that are bought in, they have to do like 2 years after you sold. That's kind of what they're doing here. I haven't seen anything less than 3 years, even if you're not clinical. Like all my friends that were not clinical still had to at least do 3 years in the same role that they were currently in, right? So I still have responsibilities to practice. You know, I feel like my responsibility is more to maintain growth and make sure that production's fine. I think when you come in and now you're the minority partner in something and the DSO or P group is majority owner, like they control expenses. Like you have to know that going into it. Like they get to do what they want, right? And so because of that, I feel like my job should be more, I'm at the practice, I'm still a minority owner, I'm a dentist, sometimes clinically, sometimes I'm running the practice. I'll focus on making sure the patients are having a good experience, our reviews are good, all the stuff in-house. They need to make sure that they're controlling expenses, right? And I think that's where some dentists kind of get, and some DSOs struggle a little bit, is they don't really define who's supposed to do what, and some are good at it and some are really crappy at it, and they put it back on you all the time, right? And you're like, well, like, and they don't have that conversation on who controls what. So I think that's like one challenge within the space, but I feel like as a dentist, our job should be post-sale to be like, let's keep the practice going. But like you guys, your expertise is supposed to be group buying discounts, right? You guys can get us this deal better. You can do that. So you make our profit margin better. We'll continue to grow.
So did you not sell 100% of the practice? You said you still are a minority owner?
I mean, you can. I don't know any DSO that'll let you.
With the DSO, yeah.
With the DSO, yeah. Maybe if they bought you 100%, there'll be a huge earnout where they'll say, we'll buy 100%, we'll pay you 60% in cash now, and over the next 3 years, if you get these metrics, we'll continue to buy out your, 10% over and over. But I had no interest in some type of earnout. I think that's kind of crap in my opinion. We did more of the JV model, which I feel like is kind of like, that's kind of the next evolution in it. So like what that means is when you sell, like let's say you did a 60-40 split, the DSO is buying 60%, you retain 40%. That 40% stays at the practice level or the sub DSO, like you were saying, Andrew. The nice advantage of that is you're still getting distributions, right? They still do. It's like your model is, right? Like it's the exact same. Or some people put you straight into the holding company, right? And then the point of that is, well, now you're a shareholder in the parent company, which is good because just like owning a stock, it can grow and get bigger and bigger, but you don't get distributions. So then that's the challenge too, is like, I'm an owner of the practice, but I'm not getting distributions. Like, do you want me to still manage the practice? Like, am I getting a salary for that? Am I not? Is that supposed to be free? And that's just supposed to be like future equity. And we know nothing, you can never really predict the future. So those are all like post-selling challenges that like, I feel like I could do a whole video on, like things to like prepare for. But yeah, that's kind of how we set ours up, is it was just split.
And so you're spending 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week, still working in the office?
No, I mean, so the one thing I set up, which was nice, and it's kind of what you did, is like my associates crush it. I'm the like shitty producer. Like I do not produce well. I'm like you, I haven't done an implant. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do molar, endo. Like I knew pretty early on, like if I could just do buccal pits, I'd be happy all day. So I just built it where I found dentists who are really good producers and really good dentists. And that's kind of how we built our two practices.
Yeah. I mean, Eric was never, bring on an associate and it's like, well, these are my patients. Those are yours. And I'm going to like take all the good stuff and you get all like just the fillings and the crap stuff. Eric was like, you do it.
No,
like,
I wanted to feed them as much as I could, because if I knew I wanted to step into more of the business aspect, like let them grow. Like I need them to stay.
You had the right mindset there. And I feel like that's where a lot of dentists struggle with.
100% the right mindset. So many docs come to us and talk to us about marketing. And this is what happens, like a chicken or the egg scenario. A doc will come to us and be like, hey, I'm gonna hire an associate. I need to up marketing so my income doesn't get hurt. And we're like, you need to fill their schedule first. And you need to need to help them get full. And that's the best scenario. And there's like a fear of having that mindset that both you and Andrew had of like, they're the ones that matter. And I'm kind of like the guy up here. And it's so funny how rampant that fear is. And that is the 100% the right mindset. And so many docs talk to me about it. I can't talk them into it.
Yeah, I ran into that same issue. So like when we were waiting for my practice to grow, I was at like a big DSO, right? And it was a newer startup office for this. Yeah. So before my second practice was opening, I worked as an associate for a bigger DSO here in Colorado. and it was like a 6-month-old startup. And so they had their owner doctor in there, and then they wanted me to come in because they said they were going to have big growth, right? But like I got 20% of the new patients, and she was taking everything. Like I literally would go in certain days and I'd have 2 patients on the schedule. And then it just became this thing where it's like, then the guarantee would go away, right? And then you never want to be in a situation like you said, Andrew, where you're relying on a guarantee. So I think I agree with you. You should I would tell a dentist, yeah, whatever you want, like guarantee $700-800, like keep it forever, fine. But if in 6 months you're relying on that, then it's just not a good fit. Like it doesn't matter if we do this for 3 months or forever. Like we're going to make a decision before then that that's not going to work. Right. So yeah, I agree. I think you have to feed the associates first, because if you do it, then it's going to help you more. You wouldn't be able to grow how you did, Andrew, if you
you've got to look for associates that are motivated. So, I mean, it's, I think pretty common saying, look for people that are humble, hungry, smart. I think with our associates, we always hit the hungry and smart boxes. The humble sometimes can be a struggle with some of them, but that sometimes comes with the territory. I mean, you get high producers and sometimes, they have to be kind of reminded of certain things, but yeah, I think if you're a doc looking to bring in associates, I think the most important things to think about is one, like, you have to be okay with the fact that you may take an income hit, because you may have to basically give them some of your dentistry so that they can ramp up their schedule. But that's going to be the best thing long-term for your practice, for yourself, for your freedom, for that associate. So you have to have the right mindset. But again, like you got to find someone who like, and it could be tough to tell 100%, but usually you can tell. You can usually tell the people that are like, they're motivated, they're hungry, they talk about their production, they want to hit new highs, they want to take more CE. They want to, learn more procedures. They can carry a conversation. And I'm not super involved in most of the hiring processes these days, but like when I was more involved, I would try to scare docs out of joining the group. I would be like, listen, just so you know, like things get crazy here. Like you might have 3 hygiene checks. You might have a crown seat. You might be in the middle of a molar endo, and you might have an emergency over there with a toothache where we're going to try to flip some same day dentistry. Like, how do you feel juggling all that stuff? And like, you can tell based on the responses, if they're like, oh man, I'm all about that. Like last practice I worked in, I was a top producer and I love having multiple operatories and jumping around rooms and all that stuff. And I figured out how to time things, versus like, yeah, I could probably manage it if I had good help. So, I mean, like I would literally try to set the scene that like our office isn't right for everybody. If you don't have the right mindset, and you're not able to handle kind of the stress of a lot of different things happening at one time and be able to figure out like which direction to go, then this probably isn't the right fit for you. And I would have dentists that would be like, hey, like, thanks for sharing that. I don't think this is the right fit. And like, that was the best thing for both of us at that point in time. So
I think that's smart. I mean, it's the same thing we started to do even with patients, right? Like, you know how much it changed when I went from saying like to patients, oh, we just prepped your crown. Your temporary is going to be so great. It's never going to hurt. Like there's no issues, right? Versus just telling them you're in a temporary, it's going to suck. It's not as smooth as the other one. It's probably going to hurt more. If you, at first for like my tooth doesn't hurt and now it hurts now, there's a reason why it won't be like that once the crown is done. But like, I feel like you said, you're almost scaring them into stuff or telling them these are the worst case, not even worst case, right? I guess it's good in your scenario because they're going to make a lot of money, but you're kind of prepping them for that. And when you have that kind of conversation and just kind of call it out in the beginning, I think it's better because it just sets the expectation. So yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I think it kind of applies to all things. And it's funny, you guys are talking about this. You're talking about from a patient point of view. He's talking about from an associate point of view. Docs come to Energize and they're like, I want to grow from 100,000 to 200,000 a month, which we do all the time. And, we during our process in our onboarding and our interview with them, we're like, are you ready for that? Like, what do you mean? Well, our job is to cause maximum stress and discomfort in the practice. The only way you get the kind of growth is massively, like your staff is going to be stressed out. They're going to be coming to you. We're going to double their workload. You have to understand, we're going to create a lot of stress and discomfort for you through that growth. And that discomfort is going to lead to your goal. And docs all the time are like, can we do it and have it not be as stressful? They say these things like, they're like, or they say like, you're the first marketer to tell us that. And it's like, yeah, because I don't want to get 3 months into this relationship. I'm filling your chair full of implants and really complicated cases. Everyone's working their butt off. You're having all kinds of problems. You haven't built the systems and processes to get there. And the reality is you can't prep to be there. You have to go through it to figure out what's broken and how to fix it. And I think in all areas, like you have to set the reality expectation of this is what the real experience is going to be. It's not going to be rose colored glasses. It's not going to be awesome. And a lot of people, I feel like if you're brave enough to do that, like you guys are with patients, like Andrew is with an associate, you end up having a way more successful relationship going forward with whatever that element is. Where a lot of people are like scared of missing the opportunity of like, I need to get an associate, and they try to paint this perfect picture. And then the associate gets in there and this isn't what it is, right? And it's like with most of my competitors in marketing, I'm like, oh, we're going to find your ideal patient and we're going to make you a visual storyteller. I'm like, no, we're going to jam patients down your throat and we're going to find out how your practice breaks and we're going to make it better and you're going to hit your goals. And there's no stress, there's no growth either personally or improvement or in your oral health or anything without some level of stress and discomfort. I think all three of us are brave enough to say it.
Growth is pain. And I don't just do that with the associates. I mean, we try to do that with all positions because you got to have people that share the same vision on your team or you're not going to get there. Like we hired our regional manager a couple months ago and during the application interview process, we told them like, this is a demanding role. You're going to be the sole regional manager for a 9, soon to be 10 dental office group. You're going to have to drive all over Florida, to different offices. Your typical work week, the expectation it's going to be 50 to 60 hours a week that you're working. There's going to be some evenings, some weekends. So like, does this fit in your life? So, if we would have went in and not told them all this stuff and hired someone, they would have been like, this job's crazy. This is way more than I expect. It's like, you have to go in and set clear. And that's something I've gotten better at. And I'm still every day working to be a better leader because I didn't go to business school. I didn't take courses on leadership, going through dental school or undergrad. I've learned to be a leader by being thrown in the deep end. And now I'm investing in, some different advanced business acumen, leadership training and things like that. But like one of the things I think I've gotten a lot better as a leader is just making very clear expectations of our team members. Like I don't want anyone to ever be surprised that, what they're doing isn't what they were supposed to be doing or isn't what, was expected of their position or, whatever it is.
I think, having clear expectations and also coming up, like, I wasn't very good at this either. In the beginning, it was like, oh, you're so nice. And like, yeah, you kind of fit the bill. Let's continue. And then you have these hard conversations afterwards about like, how did they get a raise? How did they get promoted? And it's like, if you just answer that stuff on day one, it's like, this is how you get promoted. You got to hit these numbers. Don't ask me, just because you've been there for a year or just because Sally got a raise, now you deserve a raise or whatever it is. It's like this is exactly how to play the game here. And if you don't want to play the rules, then go somewhere else.
This is the game you're signing up for. And these are the rules, these are the parameters, and this is how you hit the finish line. And unfortunately, I'm the business owner and I'm the judge and I'm the one setting the game and I'm only controlling the game. And if you don't like it, this is the way it is. And you're right, setting those expectations at the beginning, I think it creates easier conversations and less hurt feelings.
Oh yeah, that's where I stuck
Totally.
because I have such an inherent need to be liked too, right? That's always been a thing since I was a kid. And so I would do more of the thing where it was, oh yeah, it's going to be nice. Everything's going to be great. And then I have to have all these conversations. And then some staff would say is like, well, like, why are you being like this now? Right. You were so nice before with this or this. And I was trying to say everything was great. And it's like, but you're not doing this. And then you just don't get respect. Right. Like I think the difference between Alex and I is I get walked over a lot easier than she does. Right. Like people probably always feared you more than they did me. Right. Which isn't a good thing. Right. Like that took me though years to learn because if you're balancing, like for anyone listening to, like, especially like younger dentists, if you're balancing with that, like, oh, but I still want to work somewhere and I want everyone to like me and do that. Like, that's how I was. Like, that's good to an extent, but like, it is more important for people to respect you. And if your job as the business owner is to help the other person either grow financially too, and I mean, somewhat personally, right? Like you're not there to like, that's the challenge I had is if someone had like a personal struggle, like I think it's our job to be there as like support. But like, I'm not there to fix their problems. And I think I always wanted to try to do that too and be everything to everyone. And it's like, that isn't my role. If I'm focusing my energy on that, then I'm probably not focusing my energy on making sure that they're growing, from the business perspective. And if I could go back to, I would probably just not be harder with it, but just be a little more direct and say, this is how I'm going to help support you. I'm going to do it from this way. I understand other stuff is going on, but like, I can't be everything to everyone.
I've told employees that as CEO, my job is not to make everyone happy. My job is not to make you happy. My job is to create a positive work environment where you have the opportunity for growth and clear expectations. So, I mean, there are definitely times where team members are not happy, and it is what it is. This is the role, this is the job, this is the company, this is where we're going. Either you share that vision and you're on board, or you don't. And I think sometimes, again, it kind of comes down to some of the associate docs who I think sometimes think that even though they're an associate, they're an employee, that because they're a doctor, the roles don't apply to them. And I'll tell you one of a clear example of that. We instituted that our doctors needed to start clocking in. And there was a reason behind it. And we told them the reason. The reason was we have so many offices and doctors that payroll is crazy. We don't have time every time we run payroll to go back through the schedule and try to look at every day to see when a doctor was off, or we had a temp doc there, or whatever it was, or maybe they added an extra day they don't normally work. So we said, if you want to get paid for your daily guarantee, you need to clock in. That's like the only way. When we go to the time card, we can see who was there, who wasn't there. Super fast, super easy. Not to mention, we used to just have them put a note in the schedule, but sometimes things wouldn't get added and things got all messed up. So this was a new policy. Most of the doctors were fine with it. We had a couple that were pretty upset. And we had one in particular. It's like, I'm a doctor. I shouldn't have to clock in. And so we had to have that conversation where it's like, listen, I understand you're not happy, but again, that's not my job. My job wasn't to feed their ego or, whatever it is. My job is to create a system that's going to work best for our company. And, either you need to get on board of it, or that's fine. If you don't want your daily guarantee, don't clock in. You won't get your daily guarantee. And so that started happening. And what do you know? All of a sudden, everyone clocks in, even the doctor.
Yeah. So Matt, real quick, this is a good one because this is a military story. So when I was so it's dentist, right? When you join the military, you go into ODS, or Officer Development School, right? Which is different than Officer Candidate School. Ours was like the light version, right? We were across.
You guys learned military customs and culture.
Yeah. We learned how to walk and do all the fancy stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So we were at Newport, Rhode Island, and it was that was an awesome spot. Cool location. I was there in the summer, right? And the OCS candidates were across from us. But anyways, when we were in ODS, my roommate in there for a certain period of time, there were dentists, there were doctors, there were nurses, right? Health professions, lawyers, right? We're kind of in this ODS group, and there were maybe 100 of us, right? And I don't know if we were Charlie Company, whatever it was that they assigned to us. And my roommate in there, he went to our drill instructor and wanted to be called doctor. And you should have seen that drill instructor's face. He was like, what the fuck did you just say? Okay. No grunt. It was funny that a lot of doctors will get like that. And he was frustrated, right? Because they made him wake up at 4 a.m. They made him do things that made him uncomfortable, right? He didn't, he wasn't, I'm a doctor, right? Because now I have this name in front of me, or these two, a DR in front of it. Now I get these special privileges. And it was pretty eye-opening when he was in the military. He got straightened up he fought it hard for a while, but it's dude, that too bad.
Not to dig on you guys. You guys got military diet version, because I have buddies that were dentists and stuff in the military. We talk about it. Valor Dental down in Texas. I'm pretty close to both those guys. We talk here and there because they're Army guys. If you were junior enlisted and you went to your platoon sergeant that was hey, whatever, they would just make your life miserable for the rest of the time you were in their platoon. It wouldn't stop in that one conversation. You'd be like, oh yeah, cool, you're my new target forever until you leave me. This is who you are now. It's also telling though, because if that person needed that title for some reason so bad, it's very telling on what their priorities are. It's not the mission. Right? For you guys, put it back in military perspective, the mission is to provide amazing care to everyone, great experience, and the practice will grow from there, right? The guy that's I don't want to clock in because I'm a doctor, his mission is his ego, right? That really is it. And it's one of those things, the other thing too is setting expectations, both you guys, is you're in a growth scenario. So when we hire staff over at my company, we tell them, our department heads are listen, this company's growing. The way you're doing things today is not the way you're doing it 3 months from now, next week, next month. Things are changing. And that doc didn't want to clock in. Well, it's over on our side, it's we're hiring a handful of people a month now almost because we're growing pretty quick. And we just had just last night I had a phone call with my business partner, Ryan, and he comes in like, hey, this is what's going on. And I won't get into the details about it, but this person doesn't like this change because they think our culture is changing. We're becoming too corporate. Well, Energize services 310 practices, right? Like to service the highest level for those individuals, these systems, processes, and standardizations have to change. Otherwise, you're not providing the best product to your clients, right? And like Andrew has to do that to provide better. The reason why the military has standards, and you two as being military docs will understand this, like the reason why there's standards is because to run an organization of that scale and create a good, consistent experience and to meet your mission, you need standards and everything has to be done a certain way. And people fight it. And they're like, well, last month we didn't do it this way. Well, this is the new month. But you know what? Last month we had 290 clients. Now we have 310. Like, we have to change things to be efficient. And it's so funny how adverse people are to this and how invested they are in themselves instead of the organization.
Yeah, well, people resist change in general. And, you know, I will get off the soapbox in a second, but I had one more little story I wanted to tell. I had another doc once who had, you know, come to me, was upset about an interaction with another employee, I think it was a hygienist. And he basically said, I'm a doctor, I deserve more respect. And my response was, because you're a doctor, you get paid much higher than other team members do. That is what you get for going to all those years of school. You get much higher compensation. However, just because you're a doctor does not mean that you deserve more respect than anybody else on the team. So I think it's, again, trying to kind of set some of those ideas straight. Yes, you do get benefits for going to dental school and being a doctor, and that's that you get higher compensation. But all of our team members deserve the same respect. And so that's something I'm really big on. I don't think there's many things that frustrates me more in our group than when a doctor's being disrespectful to other team members because they feel like they're above it. That stuff drives me crazy.
And kind of going along with that, like in the special operations world, like if you're on a 12-man Green Beret ODA team, like the LT who's in charge of the commander, the officer, isn't pounding his chest all the time saying, I need more respect. Everyone works as a team, and everyone's kind of an equal in say of things that happen. And then they figure out how to execute on it. Like, it's like everyone's life's on the line. Like, when you're dealing with patients, you're dealing with their health. Like, you know, everyone needs to be respected equally. Like, just because you're doc doesn't mean you're the god of that operatory, right? Like, you need to have that mutual respect, because then everyone also looks at you and they want to deal with you because there is mutual respect. They want to work with you. They're excited to be with the operatory. You're the doc they want to be working with. When you're that other doc, you're the one where when the break room doors close, all the assistants are like, oh, I got stuck with this guy today. He's the doc I'm stuck with. I wish I had your doc.
Oh, dude, when we were in the military, there was one doctor who was an older one, and everyone always thought he was like pretty nice, like outside of the operatory. But like, you know, a few months in, we had heard a story from an assistant where when he would get frustrated with, like, I don't know, they handed him the wrong burr or they handed him some wrong thing, he would take it and just whip it down the hall. And it's like, whoa. So like, first off, that's super dangerous. And second, none of those assistants wanted to work with him because they were like, it like creates an environment where like now everyone's just tense all the time, and then it hurts the patient, right? Because they're not getting as good of an experience. But yeah, it's crazy the stuff
really quick. The guy that wanted to be called doctor so bad, how did the rest of his life look like in the military? Do you guys know?
No, so I was only with him at ODS. I actually like asked our drill instructor because he had created such a toxic environment with everyone else in there that I was kind of getting like tagged along because I was his roommate. And I was like, dude, people, like, I'm not really getting like a great experience right now because I want to talk to these people, but like I'm getting associated with this guy. Like, can I like get my own room or switch? And so they actually switched me out. I don't know. I don't know. I only knew him for like 4 weeks. So I don't know what happened after. Cause like then you would get stationed out, right? Like they pretty much put everyone together. And then after you were done, you knew where your orders were back. So I don't know following that where it was. I just know that whole time he struggled a lot with wanting to be called doctor. I think he kind of stepped in line a little bit. I think like anything, like you were saying, Andrew, you resist change and then you learn, well, there's really nothing I can do. So it's either I go kicking and screaming and quit, or I just have to deal with it.
This has been a really fun conversation for our listeners. Obviously, we're kind of all over the place here today, but I hope you guys got some pearls. I mean, I think we talked about some pretty important concepts and stuff. I know it's not too tactical when it comes to, you know, the meat and potatoes type of ideas, but just some good thoughts on leadership and how to build teams and how to grow practices and looking for quick starts and different ideas about, if and when the time comes to start thinking about an exit and all that stuff. It's been a pleasure to get to know you guys a little bit, Alex and Eric. I appreciate you making the time to kind of do this collab with us. Anything else that you guys wanted to ask or say, before we kind of wrap up this episode here?
I just know I probably should stop having my kids call me Dr. Kantor.
No, yeah, it was a lot of fun to talk with you guys. Yeah. It's awesome. I think what you guys are doing is great, right? Like, it is impressive to be able to grow at the rate you are, right? I think a lot of people want to do it. And I think maybe I don't know if it's as tactical as like do this in your dental practice, but I think the one thing maybe people can take from what you've done, Andrew, is like you're saying you're a quick start, and you actually do it, right? Like, a lot of people say they want to do 10 offices, right? But like, there's like a small handful that actually do it. So I think what you're doing is great in a sense that you actually said, I want to do this, and you did it, right? I think a lot of people get stuck between like idea phase and execution. And what's nice is it seems like you're a quick start who also executes. So that's a pretty lethal combo. So that's good.
Yeah, my follow through is not as great, but I'll at least get the process started. And then I've learned to really delegate things.
Yeah, delegate everything to Matt.
You need to surround yourself by people with different skill sets, I'd say. But.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, it was great having you both on. Really excited to watch your podcast grow. It was great talking with you both. Hey guys, this was Dental Unfiltered. Remember, we don't have sponsors. You can't pay to play to get on the show. Please hit like, subscribe, please share. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Have a great day.